And by a couple of things, I mean
Okay.
mostly one thing, but I'll try to do this in a more interesting format, which is we're gonna do a basic OOD just to kind of get a grasp on your class design, so that I can there's some feedback potential there, and then we're gonna transition to a more algorithmic focus on one component of the class. Okay, so that'll make a little more sense once we get there.
Okay.
But
Okay.
but the timeline's going to be we're going to aim to spend about 15 or so minutes on outlining the classes, and then we're going to spend another maybe 25 or so, I would say, on the lead code side of things, on the more algorithmic development. Okay, so let me give you
Okay.
an
Sure.
outline for what this problem is, and of course, as always, feel free to take notes, ask for clarification as needed, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So
Okay.
today's
Okay.
problem is about designing a smart fridge. Okay. Now
Okay.
the smart fridge has a couple components. The most important one is it knows what ingredients it has. It knows what's inside of it. Okay.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
knows it has like 2 tomatoes. It knows it has like 4 pounds of potatoes or shit. So it has it keeps track of the inventory. Okay. And the second thing it does is it has a recipe book. All right. So the recipe book could be like, hey, if you have 2 tomatoes and a potato, you could make like French fries or some shit. Okay. So it has a recipe book. A
Okay.
recipe book in this context just means you have some input ingredients and it produces an output product. So it's
Okay.
like a mapping in that sense. All right.
Okay. Okay.
So let's
Got
just start with
it.
this for now. I want you to walk me through um, what classes, like what design you would make for representing, for representing this information, and then we'll take it from there. So why don't you start us off?
Okay. Okay. So I'm thinking we have a class called Fridge, and then Fridge will probably have um like a list of ingredients. Well, I don't know like how I want to structure the ingredients yet, but like I'm thinking either an array or a hash map of ingredients. Maybe a hash map would be better because then I could map the ingredient to like its quantity. So like maybe that could be beneficial for the recipe book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think for the recipe book, we should probably have mm, maybe the recipe book needs to be a hash map as well because we want to map input ingredients to an output product. Or, wait, can you give an example of what like an item in the recipe book would be like again?
So the recipe, I mean, you decide how it's represented. That's your job. But the purpose of the recipe book is to have a list of all of the combinations you can have as inputs and the output result. So as an example, one of the possible inputs is 2 tomatoes and 1 potato. Okay, and the result is you get like French fries. So like that would be an
Okay.
example of a recipe. It's not just to
Okay.
clarify.
Okay.
It's not a process. It's not like cooking recipe. It's just like input and output. Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
that helps you
So
clarify.
like could there be multiple different combinations that produce the same output?
There could be, yeah. So it could be it could be maybe 1 tomato and 2 potatoes also gives you French fries. Maybe it's a different. Maybe it's like different type of French fries, but like there can be many different ways to make the same one. French fries maybe is a bit of a basic example, but you can imagine there's substitutes available. So maybe instead of two
Hmm.
tomatoes and 2 potatoes, it's like one unit of ketchup and 2 potatoes gives you French fries. So yes, it's possible. There's many different inputs for the same output. Yes, that's possible.
Okay. Okay. I see. So maybe like maybe we could map the output to a list of inputs because like if an output can have different combinations of ingredients, then maybe we should group them together. So it could be like an output that gets mapped to a list of inputs. And like for each of the inputs, maybe it would look like maybe it could be like a tuple of the ingredient and the quantity because we need both of those informations for the output.
Sorry,
Uh,
can you repeat that again? I missed that.
like to fold the recipe book, we could have the output getting mapped to a list of inputs, and then each
Okay.
input could be a tuple of the ingredient and quantity.
Okay.
Uh,
That's something. What would I'm curious. Why are you deciding to, for example, map the output to the input? Is that I mean, just by the wording, that sounds backwards. Is there a reason for that?
well, I just thought because, like, since we can have different combinations of inputs
Mm-hmm.
getting mapped to the output, then, like, maybe we'd want to group together those combinations. But I'm not too sure yet because I don't really know what the use case for the recipe book is yet.
So I mean, I'm not sure if I missed this or maybe you missed it, but the purpose, the high level purpose is basically to say, hey, given our current inventory in the smart fridge, recommend me some recipes.
Oh, wait, let me write that down.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, then in that case, I think it's better to map the input to output because we want to be able to know what we have, to know what recipes we can produce. So, like, the input could be, let me think about how I can map that. I think the input, I think the mapping should be like a list of inputs mapped to an output, and then each input
Okay.
is like an ingredient and quantity.
And
Yeah.
okay, so for the example you have, so let's say we have two recipes for French fries, right? So let's say we have two tomatoes plus two potatoes gives you French fries, and also one ketchup plus two potatoes gives you French fries. Okay, can you tell me how to represent this in your data model? I want to just clarify. I want to just
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I think it would look like ketchup, one, uh, tomato, two, and then this gets mapped to French fries. And then we have tomato, two, potato, two, French fries.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Let's proceed.
Okay. Um, I think that's all I'm thinking of right now. Like we just have a hash map of ingredients and then a hash map for mapping inputs to outputs. Um,
Okay, can you yeah, I mean, this is all still pretty high level. I'm liking the direction. You do need to actually make the classes
okay.
though, like for the problem. So feel free to
Oh,
start
okay,
whenever.
okay. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, do we need to like what sort of methods will be in this class?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the main interfacing with this would be with the fridge. Okay, so we need a way to like add ingredient to the fridge, remove ingredient from the fridge. You know, those two should just be available as like regular actions. They can call them under any circumstance. Please make reasonable assumptions about edge cases. Okay,
Okay.
and then there's going to be a function that's like recommend recipe. Like give me something I can cook. Right, recommend recipe should be
Okay.
it should just pick a valid recipe. Okay, I'm gonna just leave it at that. Just picks just shows you a valid recipe that is doable. Yeah,
Okay. So if there's multiple recipes, we just have to output one.
just output one. That's right.
Okay. Okay. I see. Like, I think adding and removing ingredients should be pretty straightforward, but recommending a recipe, uh, trying to think how to do that effectively.
So just
Like,
I want to just give a little context here, right? So that's going to be more of the algorithmic section, implementing recommend recipe. Okay, so that's going to be
oh,
a bit of
okay.
part two, right? Now, I'm just letting you know that this is going to be the problem coming up, right? But regardless of how that's implemented, you still need to put it in a class, presumably, hopefully. Have some supporting functions. Maybe that might be useful. Some helpers, right? So, um, don't worry about the implementation of that yet. Let's just come up with the class representations first.
Okay. So like I'm definitely gonna have a class for the fridge to represent the inventory. And I'm also maybe thinking of having a class for the ingredients. Would probably just store like the name of the ingredient and potentially the quantity. Unless I store the quantity in the fridge. That would probably make more sense if I store the quantity in the fridge. Yeah, the ingredient class might just contain the name of the ingredient if that's necessary. Okay. Okay, I think I can get started. So I'll call this fridge, and then I'm gonna have my constructor. Okay, so I'm gonna have a list of ingredients, which will be a hash map. And then I'm also gonna have my recipes. Yeah, okay. And then gonna add an ingredient. Do add ingredient. And then this should take in the ingredient. And do we also want the method to be able to add a certain quantity of the ingredient, or should we
Yeah,
assume a
no, that
quantity
sounds
of
like a
one?
no. I think that's a reasonable
Okay,
assumption. Yep.
okay. So, yeah. Okay, then I think I need to have my class for ingredient, and then gonna have the name of the ingredient, and that's probably it. Okay, so then I'm gonna create the ingredient with the name. Okay, and then I'm gonna add it to my hash map.
Mm-hmm.
Ingredients at ingredient dot name, and then I'm going to put the quantity. Mm, yeah, this should be an integer, and this should be an ingredient. Wait, I don't know about this yet. Okay, so this is for adding an ingredient, and then to remove an ingredient, I'm gonna pass in the same parameters. Uh, I'm assuming like we also want to pass in the quantity for remove, right?
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so then I'm gonna be like self dot ingredients at the ingredient dot name quantity. And then I should check if there's no more of this ingredient, then we can just delete it from the map. Um, would we
Okay.
want to handle the case if like we're given a quantity that's greater than the actual inventory?
Yeah, you should
Like
probably handle that.
okay. So like in that case, would we just want to set the value to zero? Like remove all
Uh,
of the inventory that we have, or should
I
we
would
return an error?
I would probably return an error. I would say that that's not a valid operation.
Okay, okay. So let's say if quantity is greater than self dot ingredients name, then we can print an error. Uh, okay. And then I'm gonna check if zero. Then I'm going to delete the key. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah. I think that looks pretty good to me. Should we run through some test cases?
You could write a couple basic ones. I want to see maybe a couple basic ones, but we don't need to spend too much time on that. We can move on.
Okay, okay, okay. So um, let's do, then I want to add an ingredient. I want to add a tomato. Oops. I want to add 2 tomatoes, and then I will print out uh, fridge dot ingredients, and we should see tomato mapped to 2. Okay, I think that looks good. And then let me try removing the tomatoes. I'll remove one. Oh, wait. Quantity is greater than self-dot ingredient. Interesting. Why is that happening? Uh, let me debug this.
Okay.
Oops. Okay, so I'm trying to print out the quantity of the tomatoes
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yep.
0. Um, interesting. Why? Wait. Let me print out the quantity after we add it. Why is that happening? Wait, what? It's getting added as 2, and then it becomes 0. Wait, what? Am I missing something obvious?
A little bit, but what's your strategy for debugging in this case?
I'm adding print statements.
Okay. Actually, now think about encoder pad. That's kind of your only option. Okay. What do you expect um, to be like? What am I looking at? Like you have these two operations. You are adding a tomato. You're printing it out. Oh, oops. What is this? So this fridge dot ingredients. This is the um, like what is fridge dot ingredients here? It's a default dict of what? What's the
Yeah.
key here?
Oh, it's the ingredient object.
What would you want to put in the key if anything? Like it doesn't like as long as you're consistent, you can be it's fine. But I want to be clear because you're using the name, right? Is that the goal here?
Yeah, I'm using the name, but maybe it would make more sense to use the object.
You
But I'm
can
using the name in both
you can
cases
use the
here.
name or the object. That's not a big like
Yeah.
what I will tell you just to kind of move us along a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time on this. If you're in your if statement, if your quantity is greater than these self ingredients, by the way, one thing you forgot is to put an else. At least in this case, um, like if you're if you're
Oh
greater
yeah.
than it, you don't want to do that. But we can talk about this after. I wanted to move along to the because we're a bit low on time. I want to move along to the next part, which is excuse me. One thing I haven't seen here is how you have represented recipes, and I wanted to just cover that in the data model before we proceed. So can you just quickly write um, an implementation for the data model?
Okay. Okay. So do we want to like have an interface to add a recipe? Is that the goal?
Yeah. So how would you represent recipes? Right? Because you need a function over here. Over here somewhere
Yeah,
that's like recommend recipe, right?
recommend recipe. Okay. Um, okay. Should we like assume that I already have this recipe's hash map filled out, or should I also implement that too?
For now, you can assume it's filled out. That's fine.
Okay. Um, Let me think. So like what I'm thinking is to just iterate through recipes and like for each recipe, I would check if we have all of the ingredients required for that recipe. Uh, like I don't actually need to pass the ingredients. And like what I mean by that is we would just iterate through self.ingredients and check if that recipe, if we have enough ingredients for that given recipe. So, like, for example, if we're looking at the first recipe, it requires one ketchup and one tomato. So, I would check in my ingredients if I have those items. And then if I do, then I can just return that recipe.
Okay, yeah, say again. I think you're on the right track. Don't double check.
Like, I would just iterate through each recipe. And
Okay.
then for each recipe, iterate through the required ingredients and
Okay.
check if we have those ingredients in self.ingredients. And then if we do, then I can return that recipe.
Okay. No, I think that's a good first step. Let's do that. Um, you still need to write the recipe. Okay. No, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, and then I want to check ingredients. Okay, so for ingredients in self dot recipe. Wait, let me think about how this is structured. So, like it, okay, it looks like I have my key as an array, but I don't know if you can use a list as a key. So, I don't know if I can actually iterate through like an array. Uh,
Yeah, you can't. I mean, that would be more difficult to do. But why do you need to iterate through like the key? I'm missing this. But like, why do you need to go through the key specifically?
because those are the required ingredients for the recipe.
Right. And what's wrong with that being a list?
Oh, like there's nothing wrong with it being a list, but
Okay.
I just don't know if I can have a list as a key in a hash map.
The answer is actually no. So you're right about that. But that's a if you don't know the quick fix for that, just assume it's possible. And move on. we won't be running that part of the code.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking like I could just have like one key that's like recipe, and then it gets mapped to an array. Actually, that's kind of confusing. Okay, I don't really know. Um, okay, so I'm iterating through the ingredients in self.recipes. Yeah, I'm not really sure how the syntax would look like, but I need to check if we have this ingredient in our fridge. Um, but like I need to track the ingredients that I'm using because actually, wait, never mind. I think it's fine. Okay, so for each ingredient, or like for each ingredient and quantity pair in the recipe, I need to check if we have that. So if self dot ingredients, if self dot ingredients at ingredient is greater than or equal to quantity, then we can continue. Okay. Else break. Okay. Let me think about this. So I'm looping through the ingredients and then I'm checking if we have sufficient ingredients and then continuing. Else, if we don't have enough ingredients, then we can break out of this loop and look at the next recipe. But then how do I determine if we have enough ingredients for the current recipe? I need to like okay, maybe I can have like a Boolean flag that's like is valid and then initially set it to true. And then once I like if I have an ingredient, like if I encounter an ingredient that I don't have enough of, then I can set this to false and then break out of the loop. And then I can just check if is valid at the end of the loop. Then we can return the current recipe because it means we didn't encounter this condition at all yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm wondering why you don't just flip it around. Like, why don't you just make this less than and then break inside of here?
Oh yeah, I could do that too.
It's a bit less stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes more sense.
Cool.
Okay. Should we test this out?
Nope, because there's too many things not working, so there's no point. I would like to. By the way, this syntax here is not valid. What was this supposed to be?
I don't know.
Like, you want to go to the keys of the recipes?
Yeah, yeah,
So that'll just be dot keys.
yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Um, okay, so there might be a little problem with this right now. Okay, so right now your logic is correct for the basic examples we've given. Right, so let's say that this is our recipes. We have two recipes right now, right? Actually, let me just think. Let me think. So let's say, okay, so let's say, I'm gonna just delete that. Boom, duplicate that. Duplicate that. I'm gonna say,
Oh yeah, I did not consider that.
right?
I kind of just assumed that the ingredients and the keys would be like unique, but
Yeah.
oh.
So what you said so far is so your function. So I want to be clear. Your function does work. I now want to elevate it. Okay. So oops, this is supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So your function does work for recommending a recipe. Now I think we want to take it to the next level and elevate it to recommend to tell me if a given recipe is possible, right? So
If
I
a
want
given recipe.
yeah. So now I want to write.
Okay.
So we can leave your function as is. We can just leave it here. But I want to write me a second function now that says check recipe. Okay, and check recipe
Check
will take
recipe.
yeah, and this will take in a recipe. Now the recipe again, we can revisit how you want to represent that, but for your case, for your purpose of our problem here, you can just assume it's like a string. Okay, in this case, if the string would be ketchup or the string would be French fries, and I want you to tell me if it's possible to produce this item.
Okay. If it's possible to produce this item.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let me think about that. So, like, for example, we would be given as the recipe ketchup, and then we can return true if we have one tomato in our ingredients.
That's correct. So if you this is your recipe book,
Okay.
and in your inventory had no, I'm sorry, inventory your fucking ingredients had sorry, this should have been freaking potato, but if you had two potato and one tomato, it should return true for ketchup, and it should also return true for French fries.
Oh, okay. Uh, okay. I think like we can iterate through the hash map key value pairs and then um wait, let me think of this. Okay, so I'm thinking iterate through key value pairs in recipes, extract the value. Wait, yeah, extract the value for the recipe of interest. So, wait, let me think about this. In our recipes hash map, we could have like multiple outputs, right? Or like, I mean, like we could have multiple catch-ups with different outputs, right? Sorry, different inputs.
Say it again.
Like we could have like another thing that's like potato one, but it also makes ketchup.
Yeah, that's
Is that
possible. Yeah.
possible?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I think we have to iterate through the hash map and then for like each time we encounter the value that's equal to the recipe, we need to check if we have those ingredients in our inventory. Like check if ingredients. I think this logic is pretty similar to what we're doing here, so maybe this can be extracted into a helper function. But yeah, so I'm gonna be like for ingredients and recipe in self dot recipes dot items. Then I'm gonna say if oh, this is the same name. Okay, let me just do for key value. If the value equals recipe, then we want to check if we have the required ingredients. So I think maybe I should put this in like a helper function so I can reuse the logic.
Okay. Yeah.
Check ingredients. Okay, so I'm gonna call this helper function instead. Help dot check ingredient. And then I'll do the same thing here. Oh, whoa, wait. Okay, let me return false here instead of breaking, and then otherwise I'll return true. And then I'll say if this is true, we can return recipe. And then if if this is true, Then, what do we want the return value to be for this? Is it just a
It's
true
a
or
it's
false?
yeah, yeah,
If
it's just a boolean.
okay, so I'll just return this value from the helper function then. Mm, yeah. Wait, let me think about this. Uh, I think like I want to check the specific recipe. Like I shouldn't be looping through all the keys. Uh, what do you think?
Well,
Think.
so unlike recommend recipe where you're trying to give any valid recipe, for check recipe you actually have a goal.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah. Wait, let me run through this logic one more time. So I'm iterating through all of the recipes, and
Okay.
then I'm checking if the current recipe is the one that we're interested in. Then I'm iterating through the different ingredients of that recipe. Wait, yeah. Because, like, here I'm just iterating through all of the ingredients of all the recipes. Wait. I think this needs to be a different helper function. Like, this helper function is looking at the single recipe, like iterating through the ingredients in the one recipe. But this one is iterating through all of the recipes.
I mean, both of them are doing through other recipes.
Oh, yeah.
But you are right in that this wouldn't quite work, for the reason that for the example given over here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I need to pass in the recipe as the key. And then like instead of iterating through the keys here, it'd be like the recipe. I'm iterating through each ingredient quantity pair in the current recipe. And then for recommend recipe, I'm also like looking at the specific ingredients. Does that make sense?
Um, that I mean, that's pretty. There's many ways to get this to work. That I mean, you could develop that method a bit more. I want you to think about this more generically, right? So not specific about, let's say, like recipes or whatnot, but just in terms of how you have an end goal, you know the immediate steps to get to the end goal, and the immediate next steps are not fulfilled.
Oh, um, okay.
Right. So then
Let
your immediate your immediate previous steps, you can call it next steps, it doesn't really matter. They're not fulfilled, but you might be able to fulfill them.
Are you talking about check recipe?
I mean, check recipe is one thing that is definitely a thing. There's different ways to do this. You can modify check recipe to handle this. You can modify check ingredient to handle this. There's a lot of different ways to handle this. But I'm just saying that, like, you can't just check one layer down.
Oh, um, interesting.
Right, and the example shows that.
Oh,
So how would you make
oh,
your code handle the example?
I think I know what you're saying. Because like we could have multiple different like combinations of ingredients for a given recipe, but just because one of them returns false, it doesn't mean we should return false, like overall.
Yes.
So, okay, instead of that, let's have like a result flag that's initially set to false, and then can do like we can update this. Actually, let's just say if this returns true, then we can return true. But if we never return true, then we can return false at the end. I think that makes sense to me.
Uh, Sorry, what's the difference? What did you do?
Like, I'm calling check recipe or check ingredients for a given recipe, and then if this returns true, then I can return true here. But if we never get a valid recipe, then we can return false.
I mean, sure, but how does that solve this example here exactly? Right? Like our goal is to run check recipe on French fries, and it should return true.
Hmm.
So like how is that happening in your mind? Like what are you thinking would happen?
Okay, so we call check recipe on French fries,
Yeah.
and then we are looking at our ingredients
Mm-hmm.
for that recipe. So, like, we're looking at these ingredients, and then our inventory is two potato, one tomato. And then we're checking if self.ingredients, ingredient, less than quantity. So for ketchup, we don't have any ketchup, so then this returns false. So then we return, we don't return true here. And then in the end, we return false.
Right. We don't want to return false.
Wait, why not?
Well,
Oh,
because for French fries,
oh,
we can produce
wait.
ketchup.
Oh, I did not see that. Oh, oh, that is interesting.
That is interesting indeed.
Um, Maybe we need to have some sort of nested relationship going on. Well, I don't know how this would work, but maybe
Yeah.
it's like tomato points to ketchup, and then like we have the potato, um, and then like uh, and then somehow we get like this to point, like these both point to French fries.
Uh huh.
Um, like
If I open
maybe
that
we need.
drawing, if I open that drawing menu on the left, which I think we've
Oh,
used before, right? So you're saying you would like to have a situation where tomato points to ketchup, which points to French fries, and you would like to have potato also point to French fries. What does that look like?
yeah, a graph.
Yeah, looks like a graph. Well, this time also looks like a tree. But yeah, this looks like a
Hmm.
graph. And we're saying, can we arrive here? Right? This is our goal.
Yeah,
Our goal is, can we arrive here? What does that sound like?
like a traversal.
Yeah, like a
like a
traversal.
DFS traversal or something.
Yeah, could be any traversal, right? And then you know,
Ugh.
our goal is to say, hey, you can see these edges, maybe not weight, but they have a value associated with them. So ketchup you need one, and potatoes you need two to get there, right? So we're
Oh,
saying, okay,
whoa.
well, for the
Yeah.
incoming nodes, right? Incoming nodes, how many do we have? If you, I mean, you have a fridge to look it up, right? Do we have one? If we have one, then this edge is valid. We can traverse this edge, right? Or let's use the
Yeah.
ketchup. Yeah. So if we don't have one, then we say, okay, we don't have one. We cannot just blindly take this route, but can we produce one? So then say, okay, I'm gonna come over here. I'll use green because I'm an artist. And we say, okay, we need to have one of this, which means that we need to have um, one of this, right? Do we have one of this?
Mhm.
And the answer is yes. So we can use one of this to produce one of this right here. And so this becomes a valid edge.
Yeah.
And because we're here anyways, I'll just continue my talk. What we didn't get to today was if the number wasn't 1, right? What the number is 10. You need 10 ketchups and 2 potatoes, right? That's valid. I mean, this is a ridiculous example, but that's valid. So we don't need 1 tomato, we need 10 tomatoes,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
we need to have 10 to fulfill the order. And if this wasn't like a 1 tomato to 1 ketchup situation, this is, let's say, 5 tomatoes to 3 ketchups, which is totally possible, well, then you would need to do a ratio, right? So if you want 10, that's a horrible example. Let's use 5 and 3 the other way around. I just typed it completely backwards. 5 and 3 the other way around. Then you would need 10, you would need 6,
Hmm.
right? So those would have been the follow-ups basically. And then there would have been some other ones with like nutrition, but that's okay. We'll get there in the future. Okay, that's kind of we're kind of at time. This is how far we got. Um, there's some feedback to give, but before we get there, I guess I usually start these off. How do you feel about this? Was it like both? I want to hear a bit about both the format and your expectations about the format, as well as what you thought about your performance in both parts.
Oh, okay. I mean, I like the format. I think it was good. I think like the first question is kind of like easy, like built up my confidence, and then the second part was like extremely hard. But the format made sense. Like it was a logical flow. I think this is a reasonable question to ask.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, in terms of how I did, I think it was bad because I didn't see the pattern at the end. Like I didn't realize this was a graph traversal problem.
Mm-hmm.
I think I should have asked more clarifying questions about that example before I
Okay.
tried to implement it. I
Okay.
think that
Yeah.
could have been better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean that. Yeah. I think that's there is more to be had here, but I think I agree with the overall assessment. Right. Like it's not that the first part I think went okay. We'll get to that as well. The second part was a bit rough. It is a pattern you have to recognize, and the hint I kind of gave at the end there, right, which is basically, hey, we have a goal. We have ways to get to the goal. You have ways to get to the ways to get to the goal, right? So that when you see that structure, you just gotta have the right intuition for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay,
Yeah.
I do want to talk about the first part. So data modeling is something you're probably not too familiar with. I mean, totally understand, not easy. However, that being said, there's still a couple of things I think could have been done. Okay, the first thing is there's a skill in knowing if you know enough information, and that is specific to whether or not you have the right goal set. So one question you should always be asking is, what are we designing the classes for? Right? What is this for? What is this for? That's something which you should always
Mhm.
have on the top of your mind, because if you don't know that, you can't be correct, right? It's just chance. So that's a
Yeah.
question you should use to guide your thought process. There's a couple of specific things I want to talk about here. The first thing is recipes should really be a class. recipes should really be a class. There's a couple litmus tests you should kind of think about
Oh,
when you decide something should be a class. I mean, like, here's the high level question: is should this thing be a string, or should it be a string in a class? Should it be a class itself with sub properties? Like, there's a lot of these things you should be thinking about, and the reason that's important is because that affects how you're communicating your thought. For example, if you're saying, "Oh, I don't think there should be a class. I think that we should just store these as strings," then to me it sounds like, okay, you must think that this is a temporary thing or something which cannot change or cannot evolve,
oh
right?
yeah, recipes should be a class because then I could map or wait. Because like I was like struggling with how to have ingredients in like a list and then have that as a key in the hash map. So maybe
Yeah,
having
I
a
mean, okay,
class would have helped that.
that would have helped that, but
Yeah.
also you were backwards on what a hash. Okay, so I didn't have to I didn't say it in the actual thing, but okay, if you're iterating through a hash map, you're using it wrong. Like, you shouldn't be iterating through a hash map. Like you know what I mean? Like, this is not a correct usage of a hash map. If you're doing this, what you should actually be
True.
doing is put the value as the fucking key. Then you can just do set the recipes at value. Like, that's the point of the map.
I think like in the beginning I considered mapping the recipe to the key, but
Okay.
I think it sounded backwards or something, so I didn't do that.
Okay. Well, by the time you write this, you should be thinking, okay, well, this is obviously not something I should be doing, right? So you should be thinking to. I don't know if you thought that to yourself, if you just thought this was normal, but like when you're editing through a map, you're just wrong. Like, there's so fleetingly few times we should be doing that, that whenever you do, especially when you follow it with a val equals recipe, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just not quite right. So you got to be thinking about that. Now, if you had instead put the recipe as the key and then the list of ingredients as a value, that would have been totally fine. That would actually lend itself very
Yeah.
well to a BFS or DFS. That that actually would have been very fine. Okay. Now,
Mhm.
um, the thing I was alluding to earlier, which is, hey, can you use a list as a key? Yes, you can. You can't use a list, but you can convert the list to a tuple. That would be valid. Now,
Mhm.
the reason that still
Okay.
wouldn't
Yeah.
be logically valid is because, you know, the recipe ingredients require a quantity, and
Mhm.
the quantity can be any number. So just
Mhm.
because you converted the list of quantities to a key doesn't make it a useful key, because you still can't know what number it is. Like, you still have to check every one of them to know what numbers they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a bit of a gap there. I think that might have just been lack of experience or practice. I'm not sure, but a couple of things I have to point out there, because that would probably not look too good in terms of the usage of the map and the choice of not making recipe a class.
Mhm.
Um, okay, and then there's some other notes there. I won't get too much into that, but I want to talk about the second part. The second part, I mean, this was sort of so a couple of things here. First thing
Oops.
is you were spinning your wheels a bit. It didn't look like you were getting good traction on progress for the question, and I don't know if you recognize that yourself or not. Hopefully you did. That's something which you should, probably practice in terms of just doing these problems yourself. There's a lot of these examples, doing yourself, and then just judge yourself. Oh, I think I'm really close right now. Let me see, and then just do the problem. Oh, actually, I was really close. I finished in like 5 minutes. Or it's like, hey, I thought I was really close, and then actually took me another 30 minutes. Then you weren't close, right? Start practicing to develop that intuition, and what that's going to help you in an actual interview is, if you because you know the time, you know how far along you should roughly be. If you're behind schedule, majorly behind schedule, you should be taking more risks. So in this case, that might mean like, hey, I don't really know what's going on. I'm trying to draw the example. I can't quite figure out what's going on in this case. Is this an edge case? Or should be caring? So you should be asking for more help, right? In a
Okay.
situation where you're behind schedule and you don't think you're that close, you're gonna fail the interview anyways. Okay, like, you're gonna fail the interview if you don't change something drastically. So you better just turn it around and try to get a lot of help. Like, that is sort of, I don't want to say it that way, but that's sort of your only chance at that point. Okay, and so I think that comes a
Mm-hmm.
lot with, like, just practically speaking, right? Like, that's just how it works. Like, know how far along you are in a problem, and that could be both for lead code and for OOD. But if you don't have the intuition, you don't even know to ask for help, right? In this case, it seemed like you weren't that familiar with the edge case. Like I don't. So I'm a bit confused on this one. I actually just told you the edge case, and it seemed like you didn't quite pick that up. Um, that actually was an interviewer giving you help. Like interviewer would just tell you this to give you the hint. Um, if it was a case that you didn't understand it, you should definitely just ask to clarify why is this a problem? What is the difficult part? You should have to ask, you should just ask that. If
Hmm.
you didn't realize that this was the difficult part of edge case, and I'm sorry. That is just going to be something you have to practice and just get more experience in. But in this case, even when the interviewer is trying to help you and trying to move you along, like this is a thing where you just have to be real with yourself. Hey, am I close? Am I here? Am I there? I need to ask for more help, etc. Okay, so the algorithmic end was not too close in terms of the structure or the idea. And I would say if you actually weren't, if you thought you were close, that's unlucky. You just gotta practice. If you knew you weren't close, I would say I would recommend trying to trying to slow down. Don't try to scramble out code. Your code will never be correct if you're not clear in your head, right? Take the time,
Hmm.
draw out a good example that you understand. Now, so you actually had a good intuition here at the end there with drawing out this little graph, right? That's great. That should have came out 50 minutes ago, right? That like this should have been the first thing on the page. So this is great.
Yeah.
This is too little, too late. Okay, but what I'm saying is, it's not a bad thing to take the time to draw things out. If the alternative is you don't draw it out and you don't know what's going on, right? Like that's the
Hmm.
alternative. So just be real with yourself. See where you are on that spectrum. And in the beginning, I would definitely recommend err on the side of caution. Okay, err on the side of caution, and draw things out a bit more than you think you might need. That's gonna actually help you a lot more. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, good. Um, let me see on my notes wise. Well, while I look through my notes, why don't you, if you have any questions or any comments as well, please let me know your thoughts. I want to see what you're thinking.
Mm, like, so you're saying that, like, if I feel like I'm stuck in the interview, then I should just ask for help. But, like, at that point, is it already too late? Like, is there any way to turn it around?
Yeah,
Or
that's a
do
great
I
question.
just,
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, so
like, is it even worth it to ask for help at that point? Because then they,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
they
yeah,
know, like, it's so blatantly obvious that you
yeah.
don't know how to do it then.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's a great question. Here's how I would phrase it: is it's a game theory question. Okay, so here's the thing: if you were to do your performance roughly today without asking for help, I believe that your pass rate will be lower than if you did what you did today, but asked for help immediately. Okay, I'm not saying that if you ask for help, they will pass you. I mean, likely, like you said, they likely won't. But it's between the two won'ts. I think the other one is more in your favor because we
I
did
see.
today. Okay, so there's two pillars of like entry level interviews. There's technical chops and like non-technical chops, like communication, social aspects. Okay, if you're not good, if you what you're saying is okay, my technical chops aren't there in this interview. That's just how it is. Okay, okay, that's fine, right? So that's a write off. We'll move on. Now let's see the other side, right? So what we're saying is we're hedging our bets. We're saying okay, we don't pass the technical side of things. That's how it's gonna be. Great. Now let me see what I can do to salvage the non-technical side, right? Let me show them I know where I am. I can evaluate that I'm not passing. I can evaluate that my code is not good. I can evaluate that aspect. I know how to ask for help. Maybe I've already thought through some of the cases where I don't know, or I know I'm not passing, right?
Mhm.
Demonstrate some skills elsewhere. And then here's the thing: the worst case, you fail the technical side anyways, because I mean you weren't going to pass that side. And then you demonstrate enough positive signal on the communication aspect, collaboration aspect that they give you a chance. Or right, or you know, best case, your technical side wasn't that good, but with the help that the interviewer was willing to give you anyways, you were able to elevate that side. You were able to patch it up, get it to a pass, right? So I'm not saying that if you ask for help, they're going to think you're great. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying is that if they don't think you're good at already, what can you do from that point onwards, right? So
Mm. Yeah, that makes
it's
sense.
not the right comparison, right? Okay. Yeah, that's sort of
Okay,
what
I
I'm
see.
getting at there. Yeah. Does that make sense? Does that sort of
Yeah, yeah, that makes
okay.
sense.
Okay, cool. Um, all right. Is that your main question? Anything else?
Yeah, that was my main question.
Okay, cool. I'll send you the feedback async. You can have a look over that, and then obviously reach out if if any have any more questions.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.